Today has been a very interesting day, to say the least. We started out with dynoing the tool drive truck, which you guys will see that. We were very impressed with the kind of power it made. And then we have now ended our day with some unfortunate turn of events. So, as you can see, this is not a diesel pickup. And you can see there's some oil bits on the ground. There's some bits and pieces here. Let me show you what those chunks of something are. The exciting part of the day, the cool part of the day, was we stuck the tool drive race truck project on the dyno. Now, I'm gonna kind of tell you guys this right now. So, I've been driving this thing. What's it been? I think it's been two weeks or so since we finished it. I've been driving it every day. It runs great. It does everything you want it to do. It's amazing to drive. It's killer mileage. And like right now I've got I think 300 miles on this tank of fuel, and it hasn't even burnt through half a tank yet. And that's with me not driving it the friendliest too. The one thing I will say is, and this is me, I'm a truck guy. I've always had trucks. I've never owned a tool drive truck. Well, I owned an S10 once, but that's different. But I've never owned a tool drive 6-liter. The smallest tire I've ever had on a truck that made anywhere close to the power this thing makes, the smallest tire I've ever had on one was like a 35. A truck on 35s kind of puts the power to the ground is a little different than the way this thing does. And the way that it makes its power is extremely, extremely smooth, extremely smooth. So when you just lay it on the floor, you're like, this is fast, but it doesn't feel that fast until you look down at the speedometer and you just went from 40 to 90 in a split second. It's pretty impressively quick for what it is and what's done to it. So anyways, that being said, it's kind of hard to dictate what kind of even power it's making. We, obviously beforehand, we were kind of talking about it, and it's like, well, how much power do you think it's going to make? How much power do you think it's going to make? Whatever. He asked me, and I'm like, I don't know, 400 horsepower. I can't even tell. I've driven a lot of trucks in varying power and 6 liters. I've driven a ton of 6 liters that made, low 400 horsepower, like they all do with tunes. And this thing just feels so much different that it's hard to even tell. Anyways, so we stuck it on the dyno, and it made some pretty impressive power. We were very impressed with the kind of power it made.
Or if I loaded.
What, did you not load it?
I did. It's not as much load.
Turbo blows up. Hey, open your door. I was honestly expecting it to make like 440. That's what I was expecting. I was expecting about 440 horsepower, just off of, you know, what I've seen in the past and the fact that this is a stock fuel truck. Like, for those that you that haven't been following along, this is a bone stock. It's studded, stock fuel, no lift pump. It's got an XDP regulated return and a irate T4 kit with an S363 on it. That is it. And the only reason why I put the regulated return on it was because it was just flat easier to do it with the cab off, so that way it's prepped for doing more fuel later on down the road. But like say otherwise, you know, obviously it's got an intake on it and an exhaust, but whatever. Huge shout out to my guy over there at Blessed Performance, because I don't think that this thing would have made anywhere near this kind of power if it wasn't for him. I called him and I told him, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want to do, give her all the sauce. And he did, because it runs amazing. It literally does everything you want it to do, and it makes killer power. It made, I got a picture of what it made on the dyno here. We'll throw that up here on the screen. It clicked off that first 470 number and I was like, no, there is no way that it made 470, not even in the slightest. And so we did another poll and it essentially backed it up with 465. I think that the other one that's on there is like 456 or something like that. The truck was already hot when we put it on the dyno, and he didn't turn the fans on when he was running it on the dyno, so I think the intercooler got pretty heat soaked. After I took that picture, we flipped the intercooler, the fans on, and cooled it back down and stuff, and did a couple more pulls, and it backed those up. It made mid 460s. To me, it's just flat impressive. I've heard of guys with a little larger turbo than stock make mid to high fours on stock fuel. I've never seen it in person. I think the most I've ever seen out of a stock fuel truck in person was like 430. Like, if you just go buy a tune pack from Blessed Performance, you put it in the hot tune, generally they'll make 410 to 420. Every single one we've dynoed is made about that. But yeah, so that's kind of that. I'll let you guys kind of watch the videos here. And we have now ended our day with some unfortunate turn of events. So, as you can see, this is not a diesel pickup, and you can see there's some oil bits on the ground. There's some bits and pieces here. Let me show you what those chunks of something are. There it is. A big old something in her. Oh yeah, there you go. This is a 18, I don't know. It's a Hellcat. The car has made shy under 800, but the car was bought modified, and it had some pretty terrible tuning on it when he bought it. And he's had pretty consistent issues with misfires and some other goofy runnability stuff. They finally got it tuned right, and then he's putting new tires on it this afternoon, and he may have done a little bit of a burnout in the parking lot. Nothing crazy. Did a little bit of a, just a rolling, blurp the throttle pretty hard, and it just went bang and smoke everywhere. I don't have the chunk of rod here in my presence currently because he took it to go. I don't know. I mean, look at that. More pieces of block. So this, I think, is rod or sonar wall or something like that, because it doesn't look like the outside of the block. This, I'm pretty sure, is aluminum. Yep. So this is guaranteed chunk of piston skirt. That's probably what that is. Same thing with that. That's aluminum. And then that's a chunk of rod. So I think those are both chunks of rod. Yep. Chunks of rod. And this is just stuff we picked up off the ground in the parking lot. Later on at some point, where he's obviously got to get an engine put in this thing, so we might later on at some point do a video on swapping it and maybe taking it apart and seeing what the inside of it looks like. This is definitely a first, because this car should not have, at the power level it's at, I mean, anything's possible. If you don't know that, like when you're doing horsepower stuff, doesn't matter what the car is, doesn't matter how much money you've got into it, doesn't matter what everybody else does, it doesn't matter any of that. Like this is always a possibility for something to happen like this, no matter what kind of car it is, no matter what money you've got into it, it doesn't matter if it's got a full built engine. It's just because you dumped too much money in parts doesn't guarantee you anything. So he obviously understands that. Oh, look, more chunks. Ooh. All right, guys. Well, that's gonna be fairly well it for this one. It's dark out. It's time to go home. All that stuff. Anyways, that's it. If you guys enjoyed the video, please subscribe and push the thumbs up button and all that happy jazz that every other YouTube tells you to do. So we will just see you on the next one.